The rain was coming down hard that Thursday night. David sat in his small apartment, going through work papers spread across his coffee table. He worked as an accountant at a medium-sized firm downtown, and tonight he was catching up on quarterly reports that were due next week. The television played softly in the background, some late-night talk show he wasn't really watching. It was quiet, peaceful even. David liked these evenings alone. After a long day at the office, there was something calming about the sound of rain against the windows and the glow of his desk lamp. He'd ordered Chinese food earlier, and the empty containers still sat on the kitchen counter. He made a mental note to clean them up before bed. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud or frantic, just one firm knock, deliberate. The kind of knock that says someone knows exactly what they're doing. David looked up from his papers, glanced at his phone. 9:47. He wasn't expecting anyone. His friends knew he was usually in bed by 11 on weeknights. His family lived 2 states away. He got up slowly, setting down his pen. Through the peephole, he saw a woman standing in the hallway. It took him a moment to recognize her. Rebecca. She worked in the legal department at his firm. They'd been working in the same building for maybe 3 years now. They'd talked in the elevator a few times, exchanged pleasantries at the coffee machine, sat in the same conference room during company meetings. But they'd never really had a real conversation. They weren't friends exactly, just colleagues who knew each other's faces. David opened the door, confused. Rebecca looked different than she did at work. Her hair was messy, pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Her makeup had smudged around her eyes like she'd been crying. She wore jeans and a wrinkled jacket, and she was breathing hard like she'd been running. Before he could say anything, she stepped inside, just walked right past him into his apartment. David stood there, hand still on the doorknob, completely bewildered. Rebecca turned to face him, and that's when she said it. "Lock the door behind me." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. She wasn't asking. She was telling him. There was an urgency in her eyes that made David's stomach tighten. "Rebecca, what's going on?" he asked, but she'd already moved away from him, walking quickly to his living room window. She pulled the curtain back just slightly, peeking down at the street below like she was looking for something, or someone. David closed the door but hesitated. Should he lock it? What was happening? Was she in danger? Was he in danger now too? 100 questions flooded his mind, but something in her demeanor made him turn the deadbolt. Click. The sound seemed louder than usual in the silence. "Rebecca, you need to tell me what's happening," David said, trying to keep his voice calm. He'd never seen anyone look so terrified and so controlled at the same time. She let the curtain fall back and turned to face him fully. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. She was fighting to hold herself together. "I need to sit down," she finally said. David gestured to his couch, moving his work papers aside. Rebecca sat down heavily, like her legs had just given out. She put her face in her hands for a moment, taking deep breaths. David sat in the chair across from her, waiting. His heart was pounding now. Something was very wrong. When Rebecca looked up again, her face was pale but composed. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly. "I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to my parents. I couldn't think of anyone else who might understand." "Understand what?" David asked gently. Rebecca's hands gripped her knees. She was wearing a simple t-shirt, and David noticed bruises on her upper arm. Fresh ones, purple and dark. "There was a man," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone I was seeing. His name was Kyle. We met a few months ago through a dating app. He seemed great at first. Really great. Charming, successful, attentive. He worked in finance, had his own place, drove a nice car. Everything seemed perfect." David listened, saying nothing. He could tell this was hard for her. "But things changed," Rebecca continued. "It was gradual. So gradual I didn't notice it happening. First, he wanted to spend all our time together. Then he started asking where I was, who I was with. He'd get upset if I didn't text back right away. He wanted my passwords. He wanted a key to my apartment." She paused, swallowing hard. "I gave him a key. I actually gave him a key to my place. I thought it meant we were getting serious. I thought it was normal." David felt a chill run through him. He had a younger sister who'd been through something similar years ago. He recognized the pattern Rebecca was describing. 3 weeks ago, I told him I needed some space, Rebecca said. He didn't take it well. He started showing up at my apartment unannounced, waiting outside my building. I'd see his car parked across the street when I left for work. He'd send me dozens of messages every day. When I didn't respond, they got angry, mean. Her voice cracked slightly, but she pushed on. I changed my locks last week. I thought that would help. But tonight he showed up again. He was at my door, banging on it, yelling. I didn't let him in. I told him through the door that I was calling the police if he didn't leave. Rebecca's hands were trembling now. He left, or I thought he did. But then I heard something on my balcony. I live on the 3rd floor, David. The 3rd floor. He'd climbed up somehow from the balcony next door. He was trying to get in through my patio door. David felt his chest tighten. This was bad. This was really bad. I grabbed the first thing I could find, Rebecca whispered. This glass award I got from law school. It was heavy. He got the door open and he came at me. He was yelling, saying I couldn't just throw him away, that I belonged to him. He grabbed my arm. She touched the bruises David had noticed earlier. I didn't think. I just swung. I hit him with the award and he stumbled backward. He hit the railing of my balcony and he went over. The words hung in the air like a weight. David felt like he couldn't breathe. I heard him hit the ground, Rebecca said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I looked over the railing and he was just lying there, not moving. There was blood. I panicked. I grabbed my phone and I ran. I didn't know what else to do. I just ran. She looked at David with desperate eyes. I think I ended his life, David. I think I actually did it. And I don't know what to do. The apartment felt impossibly quiet after Rebecca finished speaking. David sat frozen in his chair, trying to process everything she'd just told him. His mind was racing, jumping from one thought to another. A man had fallen from her balcony. She'd defended herself. She'd run. She was here, in his apartment, looking at him like he was her last hope. David ran his hands through his hair, standing up and pacing to the window. He looked down at the street, at the rain still falling steadily. Cars drove by, their headlights cutting through the darkness. The world outside looked normal, but inside this apartment nothing felt normal anymore. Okay, David said, more to himself than to Rebecca. Okay, we need to think clearly. We need to figure out what's happening right now. Rebecca wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I shouldn't have come here. I'm sorry. I've dragged you into this and you barely know me. I couldn't think straight. I was walking and I realized I was in this neighborhood, and I remembered you mentioned once that you lived around here. I found your name on the building directory downstairs. David turned to face her. How long ago did this happen? When did you leave your apartment? Rebecca checked her phone. Maybe 40 minutes ago. I don't know. Time feels weird. I walked here. I wasn't thinking about anything except getting away. Did anyone see you leave your building? David asked. I don't know. Maybe. There are cameras in the lobby. Oh God, there are cameras. Fresh panic crossed Rebecca's face. They'll see me leaving. They'll know I ran. David held up his hands. Let's not jump ahead. First, we need to know what actually happened. Do we know for sure? Rebecca shook her head miserably. I don't know. I couldn't look. I just saw him on the ground and I ran. Give me your phone, David said. Rebecca handed it over without question. David opened a web browser and searched for local news. His apartment wasn't far from Rebecca's building, maybe 15 blocks. If something serious had happened, if emergency services had been called, there might be something online already. He scrolled through a local news site. Nothing yet. He tried another one. Still nothing. Then he found a breaking news alert on a neighborhood watch page. His heart sank as he read it. There's a report, he said quietly. Someone was found injured outside an apartment building on Riverside Avenue. That's your building, right? Rebecca nodded, unable to speak. David kept reading. It says emergency services responded to a call about an injured person. They transported someone to County General Hospital. Critical condition. Critical condition, Rebecca repeated. That means he's alive. It means he was alive when they found him, David said carefully. Rebecca, this changes things. If he's alive, we need to think about what happens next. Rebecca stood up abruptly, walking to the window herself. If he's alive, he's going to tell them I attacked him. He's going to say I pushed him. It won't matter what actually happened. He's going to make me look like a criminal. David understood her fear, but he also understood something else. You ran from the scene, Rebecca. That's going to look bad no matter what. Even if it was self-defense, leaving makes it look like something else. What was I supposed to do? Rebecca's voice rose slightly. Stay there next to him? Call the police and wait for them to arrest me? You don't understand. Kyle has money. He has connections. His father is some big-shot lawyer in the city. He's threatened me before, said he could make my life disappear if I ever tried to embarrass him. This was getting more complicated by the minute. David sat back down, thinking hard. He'd always been the kind of person who followed the rules, who believed in doing things the right way. But he also believed in fairness. And from what Rebecca was describing, this situation wasn't fair at all. Walk me through it again, David said. Everything that happened tonight. Every detail you can remember. Rebecca took a shaky breath and started from the beginning. She described hearing the pounding on her door. Kyle's voice demanding she let him in. She described telling him she'd call the police, hearing him leave. Feeling relieved for maybe 10 minutes. Then the sound on her balcony. The scraping noise. Looking up to see him climbing over from the neighboring balcony. I have a plant stand out there, Rebecca said. He must have climbed up using that and the drainage pipe. My neighbor's balcony connects to mine with just a small divider between them. He'd been to my apartment before. He knew the layout. She described running to her bedroom where the glass award sat on her dresser. She'd grabbed it and come back to the living room just as Kyle got the patio door open. He'd come inside and everything happened fast after that. He grabbed my arm, Rebecca said, touching the bruises again. He was yelling about how I couldn't just end things, how he'd invested time in me, how I owed him another chance. I tried to pull away, and that's when I swung the award. I didn't aim. I just swung. It hit him on the side of his head, I think, or maybe his shoulder. It happened so fast. And then he fell backward over the railing, David finished. The railing is low, Rebecca said. I've always thought it was too low. When he stumbled backward, he hit it at waist height and just went over. I heard him yell. Then I heard the impact. David closed his eyes, picturing the scene. This was self-defense. It had to be. But proving that would be difficult, especially with Rebecca having fled the scene. Your phone, David said suddenly. Do you have messages from him? The threatening ones you mentioned? Rebecca nodded. Dozens of them. I saved them all. I was actually thinking about going to the police before tonight, getting a restraining order or something. I just kept putting it off because I was scared of what he'd do. That's good, David said. That's evidence. It shows a pattern. It shows he was threatening you. His own phone buzzed on the table. David picked it up and his stomach dropped. The caller ID said Amy Okonkwo. Amy was a detective with the local police department. She lived 2 floors down in this same building. They'd become friendly over the past year, often running into each other in the morning at the coffee shop on the corner. David stared at his phone as it continued to buzz in his hand. Amy Okonkwo. Of all the people who could be calling him right now, it had to be her. Rebecca saw the name on the screen and her face went white. Who is that? She whispered. She's a detective, David said quietly. She lives in this building. We're friends. We get coffee together sometimes. Rebecca looked like she might pass out. Don't answer it. Please don't answer it. But David knew that not answering would look suspicious. Amy knew his schedule. She knew he was usually home on Thursday nights. If he didn't pick up, she might come knocking on his door to check if everything was okay. That's just the kind of person she was. He answered the call. Hey, Amy, what's up? David, hey. Sorry to call so late. Amy's voice had that professional tone she used when she was working. I need to ask you something, and I know this is going to sound strange. David's heart was pounding. Okay, we're working a case tonight. Someone was injured in an incident at an apartment building on Riverside Avenue. We've been checking security cameras in the area, and one of them picked up a woman who matches our person of interest. The camera shows her entering your building's parking garage around 9:45 tonight. David closed his eyes. Of course there were cameras. There were always cameras. The woman's name is Rebecca Torres, Amy continued. She works at Palmer & Associates, same firm as you. I looked up the company directory. Is she there with you right now, David? There was no point in lying. Amy would find out anyway, and lying to a police officer would only make things worse for both of them. David looked at Rebecca, who was watching him with terrified eyes. Yes, David said. She's here. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Okay, I need you to listen to me carefully. Don't let her leave. I'm coming up right now with another officer. This is important, David. She's not under arrest, but we need to talk to her about what happened tonight. Can you do that for me? Yeah, David said. We'll be here. He ended the call and looked at Rebecca. They're coming up. They know you're here. Rebecca stood up so fast she almost knocked over the lamp on the side table. I need to leave. I can't do this. They're going to arrest me. Running again will only make it worse, David said, moving to stand between her and the door. Rebecca, please. Think about this. If you run now, you'll look guilty. If you stay and tell them the truth, you have a chance. A chance? Rebecca laughed, but there was no humor in it. David, you don't understand. Kyle's father is Richard Chen. Do you know that name? He's one of the most powerful lawyers in the state. He has connections everywhere. The police, the courts, everywhere. If Kyle tells them I attacked him, they'll believe him. They'll always believe him. David had heard of Richard Chen, everyone had. The man had successfully defended some of the city's most controversial cases. He had money, influence, and a reputation for destroying anyone who stood against his clients. If Kyle was his son, then Rebecca was right to be scared. But you have evidence, David insisted. You have those messages. You have the bruises on your arm. You have the truth on your side. The truth doesn't always matter, Rebecca said bitterly. Not when you're up against someone with that kind of power. There was a knock at the door. Not like Rebecca's single knock from earlier. This was official. 3 sharp raps that said police business. David went to the door and opened it. Amy stood there in her work clothes, badge clipped to her belt. Next to her was a younger female officer David didn't recognize. Both women looked professional but not aggressive. Amy caught David's eye and he saw something there. Understanding, maybe. Or sympathy, Rebecca Torres, Amy said, looking past David into the apartment. Rebecca stood in the middle of the living room looking small and scared. Yes, my name is Detective Amy Okonkwo. This is Officer Chen. We need to ask you some questions about an incident that occurred tonight at your apartment building. You're not under arrest right now, but I need you to come with us to the station so we can get your statement. Do you understand? Rebecca nodded slowly. Am I allowed to have a lawyer? Absolutely, Amy said. You have every right to have an attorney present during questioning. We can provide you with a public defender if you need one. David stepped forward. Can I come with her? Just to the station, I mean. As a friend. Amy looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You can come, but you won't be able to be in the interview room. You'll have to wait outside. The ride to the police station was quiet. Rebecca sat in the back of Amy's car staring out the window at the rain-soaked streets. David followed in his own car, his mind racing with everything that had happened. An hour ago, he'd been sitting peacefully in his apartment doing paperwork. Now he was following a police car to the station because his colleague had shown up at his door after defending herself against a dangerous man. At the station, everything felt cold and official. Bright fluorescent lights, beige walls, the smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner. Amy led Rebecca to an interview room, while David was directed to a waiting area with uncomfortable plastic chairs and old magazines scattered on a side table. He sat there for what felt like hours, watching other people come and go. A man arguing with an officer about a parking ticket, a woman filing a report about a stolen bicycle. Normal things, regular problems, not like what Rebecca was going through. Finally, a woman in a business suit approached him. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with gray streaks in her dark hair and kind eyes behind practical glasses. You're David, right? The one who came with Rebecca Torres? David stood up. Yes, who are you? My name is Patricia Foster. I'm an attorney with the Public Defender's Office. Detective Okonkwo called me in to represent Rebecca. She's giving her statement now, and I'm here to make sure her rights are protected. How is she? David asked. Patricia's expression was neutral, professional. She's scared, but she's being honest. That's good. That's what we need. Can you tell me how she ended up at your apartment tonight? David explained everything. Rebecca knocking on his door, her story about Kyle, the call from Amy. Patricia listened carefully, taking notes on a small pad she pulled from her briefcase. And you barely knew her before tonight? Patricia asked. We work at the same company, but we're not close. We've talked maybe a dozen times in 3 years. I don't know why she came to me specifically. Patricia nodded. Sometimes when people are in crisis, they don't make logical decisions. They just run and they end up wherever their feet take them. The fact that she came to you, someone safe but not too close, actually supports her story. She was in genuine distress. What's going to happen to her? David asked. Patricia sighed. That depends on a lot of factors. The man who fell, Kyle Chen, is in critical condition at County General. He's in surgery right now. If he survives, he'll be able to give his version of events. Rebecca's already told us hers. The physical evidence will tell its own story. She was defending herself, David said firmly. He broke into her home. He'd been threatening her for weeks. I believe you, Patricia said. And I believe her. But the legal system doesn't run on belief. It runs on evidence. We need to build a case that shows beyond doubt that Rebecca acted in self-defense. The fact that she ran from the scene complicates things, but it doesn't destroy her defense. People in genuine fear often run. It's a natural response. She closed her notepad and looked at David with something like respect. You did a good thing tonight, letting her in and then being honest with the detective. A lot of people would have turned her away or tried to hide her. You gave her a chance to do the right thing, even though it was hard. David didn't feel like he'd done anything particularly good. He just made the only choice that seemed right in the moment. Can I see her? Not tonight, Patricia said. She's going to be here for a while. We need to finish the interview and then there's paperwork. Depending on how things go, she might be released on her own recognizance or she might have to stay in custody until a bail hearing. The reality of that hit David hard. Rebecca might have to spend the night in jail, or longer, for defending herself in her own home. David went home that night, but he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Rebecca sitting in that cold interview room, telling her story over and over to people who might not believe her. He thought about Kyle Chen lying in a hospital bed somewhere, and about the powerful father who would probably do everything in his power to make Rebecca pay for what happened. The next morning, David called his office and took a personal day. He couldn't focus on work when all he could think about was what was happening with Rebecca's case. He checked the local news websites obsessively, refreshing the pages every few minutes. Finally, around 10 in the morning, there was an update. The article was brief. It said that Kyle Chen, 34, remained in critical condition after falling from a third-floor balcony. Police were investigating the incident. A person of interest was being questioned, but no charges had been filed yet. The article didn't mention Rebecca by name, which David hoped was a good sign. His phone rang. It was Patricia Foster, the attorney. Rebecca was released an hour ago, Patricia said without preamble. No charges have been filed yet, but the investigation is ongoing. The district attorney will review the evidence and decide whether to prosecute. Where is she now? David asked. I took her to get some breakfast and then I drove her to her sister's house across town. She can't go back to her apartment. It's still a crime scene. I wanted to call and thank you for what you did last night. Your statement helped. You told the police exactly what Rebecca told you when she arrived at your apartment, and your timeline matched hers perfectly. That consistency matters. I just told the truth, David said. A lot of people don't, even when they should, Patricia replied. Listen, I'm going to need your help over the next few days. I'm building Rebecca's defense, and I need to gather as much evidence as possible. You said she mentioned text messages from Kyle. Yes, threatening ones. She said she saved them all. I've got those. I pulled them from her phone last night. There are over 200 messages spanning the last 3 weeks. Most of them are disturbing. He alternates between begging her to take him back and threatening her. In one message, he says if he can't have her, nobody will. That's helpful for our case. David felt sick hearing that. What else do you need? I need to talk to Rebecca's neighbors. I need to find out if anyone saw Kyle hanging around her building before last night. I need to pull security footage from her apartment complex, and I need to find out more about Kyle Chen. His history, his background, whether there are other women who've had similar experiences with him. How can I help? David asked. For now, just be available. Rebecca's going to need support in the coming days. This is traumatic for her, and she doesn't have a lot of people she can turn to. Her family lives out of state. Her sister here is supportive, but she has 3 kids and a demanding job. Rebecca mentioned that you were kind to her last night, and kindness is in short supply when you're going through something like this. Over the next week, David found himself pulled deeper into Rebecca's situation. He visited her at her sister's house, bringing her things from her apartment that the police had released. He sat with her while she met with Patricia to prepare her statement. He listened when she needed to talk, and he stayed quiet when she needed silence. Rebecca was a different person than the confident lawyer he'd known from work. She barely ate, she hardly slept. The bruises on her arm faded from dark purple to greenish yellow, a visible reminder of what had happened. She jumped at sudden noises. She kept her phone on silent because every notification made her panic, thinking it might be news about Kyle or the case. Patricia was relentless in building the defense. She interviewed Rebecca's neighbors, and 3 of them confirmed they'd seen Kyle hanging around the building at odd hours. One neighbor, an elderly man who lived on the 2nd floor, said he'd seen Kyle trying the main entrance door late one night, clearly trying to get inside without being buzzed in. The security footage from Rebecca's building was crucial. It showed Kyle entering the parking garage by following another car through the gate. It showed him taking the stairs to the 3rd floor. It showed him knocking on Rebecca's door, then walking away. But the cameras didn't cover the balcony area, so there was no footage of him climbing up or of what happened on the balcony itself. Then Patricia's investigator found something that changed everything. Kyle Chen had been involved in 2 previous incidents with women he'd dated. Both cases had been quietly settled out of court, with non-disclosure agreements and substantial payments from Kyle's father. The women couldn't talk about what happened, but the existence of the settlements was part of the court record. This establishes a pattern, Patricia explained to Rebecca and David during a meeting at her office. It shows that Kyle has a history of problematic behavior with romantic partners. The district attorney will have to consider this when deciding whether to charge you. But those women can't testify, right? Rebecca asked. Because of the NDAs? They can't talk publicly, but I'm working on getting the court to allow their testimony under seal. It's a long shot, but it's worth trying. Kyle woke up from his medically induced coma on the 8th day. David saw the news alert on his phone while he was at work. He immediately texted Rebecca, who was still on leave from the firm. She didn't respond for several hours, and when she finally did, her message was simple. I'm scared. David left work early and drove to her sister's house. Rebecca was sitting on the back porch staring at nothing. Her sister, Linda, let him in with a grateful look. She hasn't said much since she heard the news, Linda whispered. I'm worried about her. David sat down next to Rebecca on the porch steps. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Rebecca said, He's going to tell them I attacked him for no reason. He's going to make me out to be some kind of monster, and they'll believe him because his father has money and connections and I'm just me. You're not just anything, David said firmly. You're someone who defended yourself against someone who was hurting you. That's not nothing. That's survival. The police came to the hospital to interview him, Rebecca said. Patricia called me earlier. She said Kyle's statement is that I invited him over and then attacked him when he tried to leave. He's claiming he went to the balcony to get away from me and I pushed him over the railing. David felt anger rising in his chest. That's a complete lie. You have proof he was threatening you. You have the messages. He's saying I faked those messages, that I sent them to myself to make him look bad after our breakup. Rebecca's voice was hollow, defeated. Nobody's going to believe that, David said, but even as he said it, he wasn't sure it was true. His father hired 3 lawyers, Rebecca continued. They showed up at the hospital with a prepared statement. Meanwhile, I have Patricia, who's doing her best, but she's overworked and underpaid and fighting against people who do this for a living. David didn't know what to say to that. It was true. The legal system wasn't fair. Money bought better lawyers, better experts, better outcomes. Everyone knew it, even if nobody wanted to admit it. But then Patricia called with unexpected news. We found witnesses, she said, her voice excited for the first time since David had met her. A couple who live across the street from Rebecca's building. They were coming home from dinner that night and they saw the whole thing from the sidewalk. They saw it? David repeated, putting the phone on speaker so Rebecca could hear. They saw Kyle climbing onto the balcony from the neighboring unit. They saw him forcing open the patio door. They saw him grab Rebecca. They even saw Rebecca defending herself. And here's the best part. They called the police while it was happening. They called before Kyle even fell. Their call is time-stamped in the police dispatch records. Rebecca started crying, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was relief. Pure, overwhelming relief.